Good morning. Good morning. My name is David Theus, and welcome to the Saturday morning coaching call, episode number 24. Peggy, can you believe that? 24.
Amazing.
Two more episodes, and we'll have half a year in the can, I guess, right?
Hard to believe, yeah.
Yeah, episode 24 today is July 9th, Saturday morning. The real time is 9:02. So we do this from 9 theoretically to 10 in the morning. We don't stretch it out quite yet to a full hour, but that's okay. This is the Saturday morning coaching call brought to you by the Small Business Patriot and Northeast Florida Business Alliance, aka the Alliance. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. My co-host today, as usual, is Peggy Lynch. Welcome, Peggy. And Peggy is with 21K Promotions. And just to give you some logistics, she is located in the, city of St. Augustine, Florida, which is nestled in the county of St. Johns County. And if you're looking at a map of Florida, we're in the upper northeast part of the state. Everybody knows Jacksonville or Duval County, so she's southeast of Jacksonville and Duval County. And I'm across the river, the St. Johns River, in an unincorporated portion of Clay County called Fleming Island, Florida, in Clay County, as I mentioned before, all of which are two counties combined with Duval to our north, where Jacksonville is, make up the Alliance, the Northeast Florida Business Alliance. And what we're discovering, some of our topics today will probably tie nicely into what is the Alliance and what does it do and how does it work, and what we're trying to do to be innovators. And today's topic dovetails right into innovation, especially in our marketing efforts, and how we should always be looking for, not necessarily give up on the old tried and true standards, but to be cognitive of things that are changing, oftentimes outside our control. And then how do we navigate new technologies and new space and stay current and even on the cutting edge. And so today's topic, I think, is going to be a nice discussion, and hopefully I can stay cohesive and make sense of it all. But anyway, Peggy, do you have can you show off your garment there a little bit? What's that on your, look at that embroidered, what do you call that, embroidered apparel?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Direct embroidery versus a patch.
So do us a favor and introduce yourself, as always. We'll catch you in the very beginning of the show in case someone ditches us, but tell us who you are, what you do, and you've got maybe a story to share.
Sure. So I am a branding specialist, and my company name is 21K Promotions. So we provide branded merchandise for hundreds of different purposes, whether you're searching out new potential clients, or you're thanking an existing client, you're doing a safety program, you're handing out items at a trade show. There's so many different reasons and purposes for promotional products, and that's what I provide. So, and with that, and I've been in it for many, many years. So my story this week is, my favorite word, I think, in the whole world is communication. And I become very disturbed when people do not communicate properly. So here's what happened. My client had placed an order with me on certain products, but then her coworker was assigned to find some wearables. And so my client called me the other day and she said, well, we've waited 30 days for this vendor to come, give us pricing, and we need, it's what's called a sew out. It's a patch that's actually the embroidered patch, and then we take a picture of that and show it to the client. So that's called a sew out. So they were supposed to have that, and in 30 days, nothing occurred, nothing happened. So she called me the other day and asked if I would provide her with some pricing and maybe a virtual proof. So I did provide a patch by midnight that night, the very first day. So that resulted in an order for over 400 garments, which is very nice. Yeah. But again, my point being is my competitor just never responded, just didn't communicate with the client. And it's just so important.
Agreed. And there's a lot of factors that go into what could be happening on the vendor side that may or may not describe their readiness or availability, meaning that, I mean, they could have had an emergency in the family, for all practical purposes. They could have had a something happened in their family, and they didn't communicate it though. And so the customer is like, well, they don't like me, or they really don't want my business. Whatever the situation is, I agree with you. Communication, it doesn't take much time and effort to keep people in the loop. And ultimately, they may end up going somewhere else, but they probably will never go back to that vendor now because of what happened and the lack of communication. So sometimes you can lose the order and keep a customer, or you can solidify the fact that you've lost the order and you've lost the customer because you didn't communicate. So keep that in mind. Okay. You can live to fight another day. All right. Well, let's Peggy, excuse me. Peggy has done a great job again on some show prep, and we've got a document we're going to pull up on. We're going to test our technology skills and bring up some document here to speak to in just a second. I want to kind of frame the conversation. I personally, this month for me, the month of June has been be silent, and listen, stand still and listen to what's going on, to my heart and the things that are going on around me. And I've been struggling as someone who's perceived to be a business coach, consultant. I don't dare I say expert, by no means. But I struggle too with how can we better serve our customers? How can we meet our customers where they want to be met? How do we do all these things in the confines of what's going on in our world? And I hear from my clients over and over and over again, I'm not reaching the people I want to reach, or what's a better, more efficient way to reach them? What's a more effective way to reach them? And so there are a lot of tools that Peggy and I knew about in our journey as far as being in business. And you're going to see a list of 4 here in just a second. And some of them are clearly antiquated due to some just trends, the things that have happened either economically, environmentally, whatever it is, that things have seasons and they come and go. And so some you'll recognize as, oh yeah, I remember that program. And then we'll get to a spot where we are today and discuss on what can we do to move forward, and what are the things that we can jump in on to be more effective, more efficient. And it kind of dovetails. If you remember the last episode, we called it digital marketing. Are you hitting your target? Part 1. We are going to have Jeremy come back for part 2, probably next week. And so it'll be a more defined presentation about what is it he does and what tools is he using to do just what we're talking about. So this may be a great segue from part 1, was kind of a 10,000 foot scatterbrained approach to that conversation. Now we're digging in deep on what are the frustrations that each one of us as marketers and business owners are having. And then he'll have one of probably several solutions that are available to us, but we'll be able to dive into that on part 2 of that episode, where digital marketing, are you hitting your target, with Jeremy Eaton. So we'll get to that in a future episode, but let me test my skills here on sharing a screen and bring up a document that Peggy helped us do. Can you see that okay, Peggy?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
And so combining marketing platforms for building client base was kind of the subtitle, if you will. But I'm just going to roll this up here so that everybody on the screen can see it, and we'll speak to this. Hopefully we'll find out in the post show how this looks out, but hopefully is it centered well and everybody look okay?
Yeah, it's very readable.
Okay, good. And you did a nice job with the font size and all right, anyway, so some of the campaigns that Peggy mentioned, and if you don't mind me, you've had some experience in your life with the automobile industry, is that correct? Were you involved in the auto selling of cars and so forth years ago?
I was married to a car dealer.
A card dealer or a car dealer?
Yeah. Automobile dealer.
Yeah. Okay. So
and I sold one car.
Okay. Well, you lived it, breathed it, and slept it, for lack of a better term. And that's an industry that quite frankly, if you're not familiar with this, think about your last automobile purchase experience and how it's probably different than what you've done in the past. Now, some of us still buy cars. I don't want to say the old-fashioned way, but there is a movement afoot to change that industry because of what's going on in the world with the internet and that sort of stuff. And so, what used to work in the past doesn't work today. So, what I want to do is not to pile on Peggy's ideas, but this is a great conversation for giving us an example of how things that we knew before that were effective, and how because things are changing and how maybe they're not so effective today, and to hopefully speak to the frustration that each one of us is having. As I always say, we only know what we know, and the challenge for us as small business people is to maintain our ability to stay nimble and stay quick and react differently quickly to the marketplace, because ultimately this is what makes us successful over a big behemoth business, bureaucratic business, is we're able to be nimble and efficient and quickly respond to our customers' needs. So that's enough setup. So number one, radio and mailer. Radio ad states, keep your eyes open for a special offer arriving in your mailbox. I guess I want to kind of pick them apart first, just briefly. But I was asking Peggy in the pre-show, do any of us listen? First of all, do you listen to the radio at home? Does anyone listen to the radio at home? No. So this is before, I want to say before Peggy and my time for sure. But there used to be a time in America where, I don't know if it was Saturday night or Thursday night or whatever night it was, but before the TV, people gathered around their radio as a family and they listened to the radio. There were shows on broadcast on, American radio stations that were theater and music, and the radio was a central part of the American household. Now, moving forward, radios became a part of our automobile, and even handheld radios at one point. So radios were the modern day cell phone, if you will, at least a device that all the kids in the 60s and 70s had in some form or fashion, all the way up to the Walkmans and those sort of things. And we've seen that generation change. But the technology now, as I was sharing, in our car, where most people think about listening to the radio, people are now Bluetoothing their devices through their car. And I would venture to say that radio is hurting from that revelation. And so people are listening to their own music mix, commercial-free music mix on their devices, maybe Spotify or some other music, Apple Play or something like that, or they're listening to podcasts, or they're just having conversations on their phone. They're Bluetoothed into their phone. And now I pull up next to people in traffic all the time, and it's not so much the loud radio that's playing, but you can hear people's conversations they're having in their car, and that's happening via their device. So radio is not necessarily what it used to be. I'm not going to totally ditch it, because the folks that might be selling radio ad space out there are being very successful, but I think they would admit it's not what it used to be. The next part of that was the mailer. I want to set this first one up to kind of set the stage that there's some antiquated pieces to this, and I want to go through every one of them and break it down. But I asked Peggy what's going on with the postal system now, and the U.S. Post Office is out of business. Basically, they're bankrupt, and we don't send mail anymore like we used to, except for the junk mail. Everything is done by email or some sort of transferred document through the internet, and time is of the essence. And so people aren't listening to the radio to listen to the signal to go tell us to go check our mailbox. And when we get the piece of mail in the mailbox, we're doing a quick sort, which one is going to the circular file, to the garbage. And so those campaigns, albeit used to be a central part of our daily lives, listening to the radio and running to the mailbox to check what came in the mail, it just doesn't happen anymore. And so we as marketers and business owners are left with, okay, that's not working. What do I have to choose from? Okay, Peggy, you want to jump in here with anything? Want me to keep going?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
anxious to hear your input. I mean, David is kind of playing the devil's advocate here. Here are some ideas, and he's going to share why he thinks they have perhaps stopped working.
So, just to touch on a couple more, and these were, by the way, these were great campaigns. I can remember each one of them. The 3-piece puzzle, back to the whole mailer and the promo product. Now we've got people anxious to get to the mailbox to see what it is. They've got piece number 1. They can't wait for the next one to show up, and they know there's a prize coming. Okay, that's antiquated because we're not using the mail anymore. The convention contest, car dealers handed out scratch-off cards to the auto show. If you're at a show, if you're at a live convention, there are some really cool tricks that you can use to get people engaged. There's a passport program where if you're at a show and you need to get people engaged to come to every booth, you issue them a passport, a travel passport. And what you need to do is when they come to your booth, they get a stamp, a unique stamp that maybe has your company logo and your brand on it. And just like if you travel abroad, you have to go through customs and get your passport stamped. That's another way to make sure that the attendees travel through the show and get to your booth on time, and everybody gets a shot at them. Just like this would be scratch off cards to an auto show, and then they would take the scratch off card back to the dealership when they return home, and the dealership would wait for those people to bring their scratch off cards in and redeem a prize. And so it was always about getting to the customer to get them back to interaction with us as merchants, I guess you would say. And so, I mean, Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun. This has been going on since we all would go to the bazaar or the marketplace. If you ever traveled in Europe or some of the big cities here in America, there was always a centralized marketplace. There was, you went downtown as a young person. You went to the Woolworth diner for breakfast or lunch, and you traveled shop to shop on shopping day, and it was convenient, and it was as much entertaining as it was effective, because you get to see your friends and neighbors and people that you wouldn't see unless you went to church on Sunday. And so the marketplace has always been a place that we as merchants and small business owners are trying to identify. First of all, where is the marketplace? What is the marketplace? And where are these people gathering so we can gain their attention and get their interest in what I have to, my wares, if you will. And then how do we get them back to my shop? And so that is the struggle. That is the challenge that each one of us, old dogs and new, are trying to stay up with, and trying to stay innovative, and trying to stay, dare I say, on the cutting edge. At least what's the next move? Where are people doing? What are they doing, and where are they going? So step number 4, social media and virtual meetings. Invitation link on Facebook, link to join upcoming virtual meetings. Well, here we are on a podcast. Now, I don't want podcasting to go away so fast. I think we're in probably I don't know what years we're in, the twilight years, or we're in the golden age of podcasting. There's a time, there's a time span on this too. At some point, it may be passé to be doing this. I think at some point we're going to have chips implanted in our head, and they're just going to send us messaging that way. But that's a whole nother story. But social media, virtual meetings, the overriding principle, or the overriding premise, is we've got to identify who and where the market is. And so that is the challenge. Taking us back to the car dealership, for example, when not everybody does this, but the car dealer model, and I don't think they would be offended by me saying this because it's the truth, it is broken. And not unlike any other model that we're talking about, but this one's easy to pick on. People don't want to buy cars that way anymore. They don't want to have to get in their car and drive across town. If you notice, car dealers were typically on the outskirts or the outside of the city limits because they needed so much land and real estate to park all the cars on. So real estate costs drove them further outside of town. And so that meant if I wanted to buy a car, I had to go further out. And the dealerships got smart and said, maybe we should all buy land next to each other. So if they're not coming to my store, they're coming to your store and vice versa. So that was part of the technology update on their part, but nobody wants to do that anymore. And so we're buying cars over the internet. I mean, and they're bringing the cars to you. People are buying cars. This may seem crazy to us older folks, sight unseen, except for the virtual tour that's on the internet. And so I can go on my computer, I can sit here in my pajamas on Saturday morning, if I so desire, and I can shop for a car and get a sense of the Carfax and all the details I would need. Don't negotiate because it's now non-negotiating pricing, and buy the car, secure the financing right here, all the transaction, and they will deliver it to my house that day or the next day. So that model has changed, driven by the necessities of the world we live in. So let me stop for a second. I've got another train of thought I want to go to next, but any thoughts, Peggy? Well, I know we've kind of had a pre-show about this, but
Yeah, I think first of all, it's a great subject matter because it makes us remember that we need to keep up with marketing trends. We need to keep up with what's happening currently so we can communicate, there's my word again, with colleagues and customers and so forth.
yeah, I think the challenge, and for you watching and listening, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube under the heading of the Small Business Patriot, or if you're listening to us on Spotify under the show heading of Small Business Patriot, this is the Saturday morning coaching call. So please like and follow along with us and subscribe and share with a colleague or fellow business owner or friend if you find this information interesting. But me being the small business patriot, there's an element of this that speaks to what's happening in our nation as well as in the marketplace. And so this month again has been a real time for me to kind of be silent, be still, and to watch and try to understand what's going on, and to realize my struggles and my frustration that I can't, I'm struggling with the same problem you are. I need customers as well, and I need folks that I can help be more effective and more efficient. And how do I go about meeting them in the terms that they're willing to come meet me? To literally get in the car. I've got a client right now who's after me, who wants to pay me for my services, but he is someone who wants to meet in person. Now, in the old days, I would meet that person, 5 or 6 people a day in person. But now, because of factors outside of my control, the first one comes to mind is gas at $5 a gallon, and then time away from the office. I have this vehicle Zoom that we're on, for example, to meet over this medium, and it's by far more efficient. I don't have to get out in traffic. I don't have to spend 30 minutes to get there that I'm not getting paid for. Mind you, the gas that it's going to continue to take. There's an argument, well, you should get an electric car, and no, I'll talk about that moment in a second. But the point is, we as Americans, I was trying to understand, what does it mean to be free? So I'm not going to get too far into this from the small business patriot piece, but I think it sets up the conversation well. The struggle and the frustration we're having as Americans, especially small business people, this is why we are small business owners, because we wanted to do it our way, and we wanted to be able to meet our customer where they needed to be met, to be effective and to be nimble and to be quick and responsive. Is we're now being forced to do it some other person's way. And those outside factors that we have no control over, gas, for example, is dictating to how we change the way we meet our customers and that we interact with people. And so I told Peggy a story. I'm going to tell this real quick story, then Dave will shut up and we'll have some conversation. In my early career, I was a manufacturer's rep in the office furniture business, and I represented about 13, 14 different lines of furniture. Well, part of my customer base was the architectural and design firms. Those are the people that specified the furniture that was going into a new building. Well, it became pretty apparent that architects and designers don't get paid, their firms don't get paid unless their people are designing buildings and designing interior spaces. And so they did not like their people leaving the building to go out on sales calls. They wanted them to stay at their desk and keep working so they could maintain their margins. So they made it pretty clear to us manufacturers reps that you're going to have to bring your wares to us. We're not coming to you. And that happens in several different industries. The doctors, for example, the medical profession, the private doctor, he or she spends 7 minutes with each patient, and it's down to it's clockwork. And they can't afford to leave the practice to go see a pharmaceutical rep, because 30 minutes to get somewhere and 30 minutes to get back, that's 60 minutes. That's nine patients they could have seen at whatever rate they're getting for their patients. And so the pharmaceutical reps in the room that can identify with this, they have to go to the doctors. Well, that's kind of what's happening now. Is the customer that we're trying to deal with says, I don't want to come to you anymore. I don't want to go downtown to the marketplace on Thursdays for shopping day because I got other stuff I want to do. I don't want to have to get in the car and drive somewhere for 30 minutes and pay the gas only to find out that parking is a challenge or a struggle, or God forbid, I may get attacked in the streets from this lawlessness that we've got going on in our nation right now. I might get accosted from some nut job. And so I'm not going to expose myself or my family to these elements that are going on when I can stay right here on my computer and conduct business. And so now we as small business owners are challenged to find the marketplace. And how do we do that? And some of our business models are really reliant upon physically, touching somebody. I mean, a plumber, some of these core businesses that we rely on daily. We just had a plumber visit this week and an air conditioning visit this week. And I couldn't do the plumbing. I guess I could watch a YouTube video and learn how to replace a toilet. I could have done that, but ultimately, I wonder if I could have had a toilet dropped UPS or Amazon to me. I bet I could have. That would have been a good experiment, is to say, I'm not going to employ a plumber. I'm going to do it myself, but I don't want to do that. So that was part of that process. And the AC situation, the same way. I guess I could have learned on YouTube how to fix the AC. I would rather employ somebody to do that. But the bottom line, there are still jobs where people have to get in their cars and go do them. But I bet you, in firsthand experience, we have an AC person in our group, and he and she, a husband and wife team, are struggling with the real cost of driving that truck that doesn't get 40 miles to a gallon, and the cost incurred to fill it up with gas, and then the cost of time that they're not working on something. How do we schedule our days to make as much as we can? And then the cost of the materials they need to do their businesses has skyrocketed because of inflation and all kinds of things that we won't talk about on this particular episode. And so they're feeling the crunch of the gross profit margin. And so how do we get more efficient and more effective so we can handle all these sorts of things? Okay. I painted a pretty bleak picture. This is Downer Saturday. Like, yeah, okay, Dave, we know that there's struggle. Jump in, Peggy. I know that I'm doing most of the talking, but any thoughts?
That's right. That's right. Well, first of all, it's not so bleak. I'm thinking about these marketing programs that were effective some years ago. And the one thing that I liked about those programs is that they were all very creative at the time. And when you're in marketing and or sales, you have to have a little bit of a creative personality. So if I could just add to that list real quickly, just a story regarding marketing and sales types. So I don't know if anybody has watched these episodes called Better Call Saul. Okay. But either way, I happened to catch one, and Saul is a struggling newer attorney, and he decides he's going to target seniors and elderly, with his business, try to bring in those clients. So this was creative. He connected in the program. He connected with Jello food cups company, the little, because every medical facility in the world, I think, is required to have Jello on their menu every day. So he knew that Jello would be a big hit. So the little cups that you peel off the top.
Right.
So his last name is McGill. So when the seniors or the elderly finish their Jello and they turn the cup to see the bottom of it, it says, "Need a will? Call McGill."
Was it a sticker they applied at the bottom of the cup, or was it in the cup?
Imprinted, like screen printed on copy. Yeah. So I mean, I think that was very creative. It's kind of funny.
To your point, and I think this conversation is shaping this way, that ultimately the theme for the show is, how are we meeting our customers where they are? What are we doing? I gave the analogy or the story of having a city, a small town. You grew up, was hometown for you Naperville, or what was hometown?
City of Chicago, Illinois.
Okay, so when you were a young person, where would you go? What part of the city would you go to for shopping?
Oh, downtown. We'd get on the bus and go on downtown.
So my parents they tell a story. They lived in, is it Whiting, is that Indiana or Illinois?
Indiana.
Yeah, Whiting, Indiana. This is back in the 50s, early 50s. And they lived in Whiting. My dad worked for Underwriters Laboratory in Chicago. And Mom just loved this, what I'm going to call the old side of the river in Chicago versus the new side. So on Michigan Avenue, but I don't know if that's south, east, west, or north. I can never, my spatial disorder with the lake always messes me up. But do you know what I'm saying? The old side of Michigan Avenue, which would have been, which direction would that have been? From the north side?
North, you mean right along Michigan Avenue? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As you come further south, it's that's where all the newer buildings are.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So she always told us about, there was an old Woolworth down there that they would make sure that they went to the diner, and of course they shopped, all those shops along the way. And I saw something on the internet. Whenever I would go to Chicago for 10 years, 10 summers, working in the furniture business, I stayed at the Palmer House.
Yep.
Which was down on that side of Michigan. And it's I don't know when the thing was built, in early 1900s probably, but I just felt like, you're going to be in the big city, then you got to go to the Palmer House. But anyway, it was neat to walk the steps, probably where my mother and father were in the early 50s, because I'm somewhat nostalgic that way. But the point is, each one of us had a meeting place that you'd go to the city, for example. That's where you went shopping. And then as time progressed and people moved out of the cities to the suburbs, these things became malls. These sprawling suburbanites needed a place. They didn't want to drive all the way back into the city, and because our homes weren't we didn't live in the city anymore or close to it. And so they built sprawling malls. And each one of us are probably old enough to remember that the malls were the place. I mean, sometimes you went to the mall, you didn't even want to go shopping. You just wanted to go people watch. I mean, and there were food choices, there were restaurants, there were, you could go have a drink even. And the mall was a happening place. We even had, when I was a kid, we had people called mall rats. And those were people that were, young teenagers that were always in the mall, up to no good probably. But anyway,
the mall walkers, lest we forget the mall walkers.
Yeah, mall walkers. Yeah, because it was in Florida, especially, it was air conditioned and controlled climate, and perceived to be safe at the time. Well, time progresses, and the last place I ever want to go to is a mall. And malls are hurting. The internet has all but destroyed the mall. For every big box store that was an anchor at the mall, either Amazon has done away with them, or they've moved their business to online. And, Macy's, you don't go to the Macy's anymore. You order online, or you don't go to, well, Sears and Roebuck is gone. So there's a lot of stories we can talk about these entities that are gone, but they've changed with technology. They've changed to where the marketplace is and where our customers are going to find them. And so we, as small business owners and business owners for that matter, have to constantly be aware of what's going on and where is the market? Where are our people gathering, and where are they doing things? And so I think this show may be a setup for part two of the show with Jeremy. I think this is what this is coming down to. Because Jeremy Eaton, the fellow that we had in part one, who's going to come back and see us again, is really going to share with us some of the technology and what's going on in what we call digital, the heading of digital marketing, and how we're actually able to identify our customers and where are they and how to reach them. It's actually amazing stuff. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, when I spoke to him, or we spoke to him 2 weeks ago, I made a big mistake, and I'll share this real quick. In the financial services business, I had a great mentor tell me one time, that's, David, when you're describing difficult subject matter, the challenge you have as a financial advisor is to take a difficult subject and make it simple and understandable, make it palatable to your customers so they understand what it is that it does. And some of the vehicles that we talked about were very intricate and involved, shall we say. And so he often told me, Dave, when the customer wants to know what time it is, tell him what time it is. Don't tell him how to make a watch. And so I was sharing with Jeremy over the phone after our show this past week that I made the cardinal mistake, the cardinal sin of asking you how to make a watch. And it just comes by my nature naturally. That I grew up in a household with an engineer. My father was an electrical engineer, and I've probably got some engineering DNA in me. And when I see something, I immediately go to, gee, how does that work? I want to take it apart and understand how it works versus just accepting that. My wife just says, I don't care how it works. So she just wants to know that it works, So hopefully when we come back on step number 2 or part 2, we're just going to find out what time it is versus how the clock works or how it's made. But I think this is a great conversation that we're having to at least set the stage that once again, the market's changing, and it's changing because of technology, but I believe it's changing. Some of the change, a large portion of the change, is happening because of outside sources. And before I get to this next step, Peggy, it's 9:40, so we've been doing this about 36 minutes. I've got a closing statement, thought, idea I want to wrap up with, but I don't want to cut you off. So, any thoughts? Are you with me on this setup? For this might be a good precursor for the next show, or?
Absolutely. I was just going to say that I'm so looking forward to Jeremy joining us again because, today's episode is, sandwiched in between his 2 episodes. And the first one was fantastic. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more, learning more from him. So
I guess this would be a prequel. I don't know what they call that, where you see that. I don't know. Anyway, let me stay focused. Let me wrap this up with a bow, and something that came to me this week in my mission to listen and to be quiet and stand still. I think, as the small business patriot, we as Americans have lived in a society that we know as free markets and free enterprise. And especially the small business person, man and woman, who decides to go out and start their own business, lives under this whole convention to be free. And I started to ask myself, what does it mean to be free? I mean, we can wave the American flag and talk about freedoms and liberties, but what does it really mean to be free? And so it came to me that freedom is about not doing what we want to do only, because we have a standard of laws. We have the rule of law. So we have some guideposts. You just can't go off the reservation and do whatever you want, whatever comes to, whatever pleasure you want. We're living in that world now. We have this thing called the rule of law. So there's some guideposts, there's some fence posts, there's some guardrails to keep us on the road. But within the confines of the rule of law, we truly have the freedom to interact with ourselves, with our persons, with our families, and with our customers in our marketplace and with our vendors, however we choose to do so. And free market says that we can meet each other in this space, and I can have goods and services that are offered and that maybe you want, and we can have a negotiation process that takes place between price and services delivered and how we choose to receive them. And so there's a meeting of the minds at the marketplace on how we choose to conduct business with one another. And it's totally free and open, meaning that as long as we're not breaking any laws and staying within the rule of law, that we can conduct ourselves freely to do so. Now, there's some things going on that have finally started to resonate. What's happening, and outside forces from our current administration, for example, and not just the Biden administration, but this has been coming for a long time. Our progressive movement, if you want to call it, is now taking away that freedom, and they're mandating things that we really don't. They're not advantageous to our lifestyle as Americans to be free. And so we're stripping some of those freedoms, if you will, and being forced to be compliant in a place that we know that we really don't have to be. It doesn't have to be this way, but we're now being forced in a direction that not a lot of us want to be forced in. And this is that rub. I've been feeling this sense of frustration for the last, I don't know, maybe since the election, but there's this frustration that's welling up inside of me. What is going on that's making me feel this way? And so I've come to grips with we as small business owners. The reason we broke away from large business is because the larger the business gets, the more behemoth it becomes, the more bureaucratic it becomes, the more complex it becomes. And so there's decision makers, several layers of decision makers that we have to travel through, and the more inefficient it comes. And businesses are always striving to be more efficient and more effective, not only for profit reasons, but to keep their customers and satisfy their customers' needs. And so we as small business owners, albeit there are some challenges that we can't do that big business can, we're more nimble and we're more quick to respond. And I think that's why a lot of us did this. A lot of us left the big box and the big business atmosphere so we could be more catering to our customers and more servants for our customers. And we get great reward from that. We get personal satisfaction of doing a good job and doing it right. And we get paid. And we get to keep more of the share of the profits and not have to pay for, large plant property and equipment, large staff, all those things that come along with big business. But what's happening is our nation, our government is stripping that away from us. And I've said this all along, I couldn't put it into great words, but we are the last of the patriots. We are the last of the pioneers, small business, because we're the one that goes out and kills it every afternoon or every evening or every morning and brings it home to the dinner table. And so our government can control big business because big business needs tax breaks. They need concessions. And government, like governments always do, there's no free lunch. All things come with strings and now ropes and cabling attached. So the government makes a deal and says, well, okay, big business, if you'll do this, we'll do that. It's the old, if I can, would you? And so the big business says, okay, well, this works for our best interest, then we'll be the mouthpiece for you on this. And we'll help you spread your talking points and employ your compliance that you need over our people so that we can have the result that we want. Well, this is having a damning effect on small business. And I think our progressive liberal leadership has figured out they can't beat us unless they put us out of business. And so this is the challenge. This is the freedom that I've been searching for. What does it mean to be free? What does it mean to be an American? We talked about in the pre-show, just a quick example, and the irony of Mr. Biden being tied back to now the worst president, second only to the worst president of presidency of Jimmy Carter, and how, think back when we were kids in the 70s, or at least I was, Jimmy Carter wanted to bring in the metric system. And it's funny now, as an adult, I see things differently, but the metric system when I was in grade school was, this is the new craze, and we're all going to go to metrics. Well, why are we doing this? Well, the rest of the world is on the metric system. And we're the only country, maybe except for, I guess Canada was on it. We're the only nation in the whole world that doesn't use the metric system. And who are we to think that we're better than the rest of the world than to not be incorporating the metric system? Well, if you're old enough to remember, that didn't work out very well. And the American people objected to the metric system. Now they've got it published now. When you buy a half gallon of milk, they've made it where you're going to have to put all the metrics measurements on there as well. And it's out there. So we may, before it's all over, be convinced that the metrics is the way to go. But this speaks very well to the fact that we are Americans. And I think the rise up against the metric system was a perfect snapshot of what does it mean to be an American, and the freedom to choose, the free marketplace to choose what we want and what we're going to accept and what we're going to use versus someone telling us what we have to do. And so in 1976 or whatever year it was, we said, no, screw the metric system. We're not doing it. Why? Because we're American. And that should be good enough. But apparently we live in a place where that's changing. And there's more of those who want to change it than there were back in 1976. And so I think we're living in a time where things are now being forced upon us that we don't want. That's what freedom is. We're willing to operate within the rule of law and stay within those confines of the law, as long as you leave me the hell alone to be free to do the things I want to do and to serve my customers and to be a customer and dictate what I want versus what I'm being told to do. So that puts us at the dilemma. To tie it back into our conversation today, I think the big challenge is not only technology is changing, but is technology changing at a pace to keep up with things that are happening? Are there forces that are happening outside our control that ultimately trying to push us to a direction that we don't want to go, a narrative, dare I say, that they would like to push to a direction that one party wants, and the Americanism, the true American spirit of freedom, has now run into this machine that, we're butting heads, if you will, and trying to maintain this establishment of freedom that's in our DNA. And this is the conflict. Does that make any sense, Peggy?
Yes. And I'm thinking as you're speaking, we all need to stay aware of trends, marketing trends, and all these others. And these episodes, I'm hoping that every small business owner views these episodes, because it keeps us aware of current trends. So,
Well, I'm going to drop out of this document real quick so we can get back to a two shot. For those of you that made it this far in the episode, thank you. If anyone would share a comment, that'd be great. You know, that little episode I went off on, I don't necessarily want to do that every show here, but maybe there's room for, under the heading of the small business patriot, a space for editorial. And if that's something that sounds interesting, I don't know if I could conjure up one of those every week, but these seem to be subjects that are on my heart. And sometimes they take time to develop. I have to kind of stew over them and what's it called when a cow eats its cud? Ruminate. I have to ruminate over them. It's a big fancy word. That means chew on it. And so I think this way, which sometimes to my detriment. I was sharing with Peggy that I seem to be a little bit more strategic in my thinking at a 10,000 foot level, which from a business owner doesn't always serve you well, because at the end of the day, you got to be in the trenches and making deals and making closes. So that is a challenge for me all the time, is to stay in the trench, to keep my ox in the ditch, and not to be strategic all the time. But maybe as a business coach, that's where my gift is. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to get further into digression, but these are the things I think about, and this is how I think. And for those of you that are watching that maybe find that interesting or at least entertaining, leave me a note that says, yeah, I'd like to hear more of that on an editorial basis, and we'll keep it separate apart from this show and maybe put it under a different heading for some additional content. But anyway, as always, Peggy, thank you so much for giving up of your time on a Saturday morning from 9 until 10. And actually, we start a little bit before that. And thank you for all your efforts that you do to prep for our show and your great ideas. I will leave your contact information in the show notes as usual for your website and your email address for people to get a hold of you. Is there anything special wise you've got going on that you want to promote, or any activity that you're thinking might be good for someone to know about? Or
I wish I could say something. I don't get.
Well, here's the good
right.
thing. If you're looking for someone who understands the importance of communicating with their customers, and now we live in such a time where time is of the essence, even more so than it ever was, and the commitment to communicate every step along the way from start to finish, then Peggy is your person. And the good news is she's in St. Johns County in St. Augustine, Florida. But because of this technology that we have available to us, the phone, the email, and the person-to-person conversations we can have via Zoom, then she can service in different states. And so I know she's been doing business in as many as 7 states so far. And we talk about scaling our business. And so she's meeting her customers where they are in the marketplace. And so we're always challenged and looking for new ways to do that and attract those folks to meet us in the marketplace. But Peggy is not just talking the talk, but she's walking the walk. So if you need these types of services and a professional that's going to continue to communicate with you and keep you up to speed of what's going on, give Peggy Lynch a call with 21K Promotions. And I'll leave that information in the show notes, how to get a hold of her.
Thanks, David.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we've done it. So I'll be following up with Jeremy this week, and I think this is a great pre-show to get us ready for Jeremy to come on board and bring us home. So we'll look forward to that, and that'll be part 2. All right. Well, in that light, the weather's been kind of hinky for us up here in Northeast Florida. We've had some rain and thunderstorms, which is typical Florida stuff in the summertime. But have a great rest of your weekend, a productive week.
Very good.
And
thank you.
Yeah, until we see you again, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time.
Will do. Okay. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.